One of the most exciting parts about this particular version of the A+ is that it introduces the idea of basic Linux command line commands. Now, in the Linux world, we really call it terminal, but we're going to just say command because that's what A+ says. Now, what we're going to be doing in this episode and in other episodes is marching through some fairly basic Linux command line stuff. Now, trust me when I tell you, Linux, if you really want to enjoy the power of it, you use a lot of command lines. So we're going through only some of the most basics. And in this episode, we're going to get you through the very most basic of the basic in terms of getting you to open up a terminal, move around within the directory structure, and close a terminal. So let's get started by using some basic Linux commands. So here I am with my Ubuntu desktop, and I've got a terminal up and started. So what I want to do is run a few things. Now, first of all, if you've been watching the Windows episodes, when you look at the prompt in a Linux command, it looks very different. Let me show you your first Linux command, pwd, print working directory. And we'll see by default, you are dropped off in your own set of folders, in your home folders. So if you look there, it says home, student. So we're in the students pile of home folders. Now, to actually see the contents of what's in here, we type ls. Now, if you type ls by itself, it's pretty good, but what you want to do is you want to put a particular switch on the end. All switches begin with a minus sign, so I'm going to do ls minus sign l. So we type that in, and now you get a lot more detail. Everything you see in blue is a subfolder, and then examples.desktop here is a file. So you get an example of files and folders. Now you got to be careful with these commands. They are all case sensitive. So watch what happens. I'm going to type pwd again, except I'm going to do it in all caps. Whoops, it doesn't like that. That's because all the commands are going to be lowercase. There are a few very simple, very rare exceptions, but pretty much they're all lowercase. Okay, so now we can see the contents and we know what directory we're in. Let's move around within the directory structure itself. Now, the first thing I need to warn you about Linux is that there is no C:, D:, E: kind of stuff. Everything is mounted to one directory tree. And if we get to the top of that tree, it's still called root. So we're going to use the cd command just as we do within Windows. In fact, the cd command in Linux is very similar to the cd command in Windows. So let's march through very quickly a little bit of this. So what I want to do right now, let me do pwd one more time. So I'm in the home student folder. So I want to go just to the home folder. So I'm going to type cd space ... just like we would in Windows. And you'll see we're in the home folder. I can cd space ... one more time. And now I'm in the absolute root of this entire system. So if you need to get to the root, using your cd space ... works just fine. Now let's go ahead and get right back to our home folder. So I'm going to cd space home and then cd space student. And here I am right back to it. These are really important commands. I would say 90% of the time I'm finding myself typing ls commands, cd commands, or pwd. Now, the world of Linux has to do a lot with text files, so let's take a look now at the popular VI editor. If you want to work with a Linux system, you're going to have to get used to the idea of editing text files. Virtually everything we do in a Linux environment requires us to open up a text file in some kind of text editor and make some kind of changes to it. So that's okay. The challenge we have in this particular episode is that the text editor that CompTIA in their great wisdom has chosen as the text editor to teach you is called V or VI, depending on who you talk to. VI is one of the oldest, worst text editors known to man. In fact, if I meet a Linux person and they're really good at VI, I usually don't like them. So, understanding this, I'm going to show you the VI text editor. Now keep in mind, I bet you've used a text editor in your life. You've probably used Notepad in Windows or something like that. So all your knowledge of text editors, throw it out the window because we're about to enter the brave new world that is V. Let me show you how this works. So here I am in my documents folder and I'm going to create a text file called, I don't know, Bob, and we're going to use VI to do this. So to run VI, we just type VI and I'm going to create a new file called Bob, so I'm going to type BOB, and I hit enter. And this is the default VI screen. Now, if you were used to any other regular text editor, you could start typing here and something would happen. Yeah, well, not with VI. You see, when you're dealing with VI, you have to get into the idea of what are called modes. So there's like insert mode where you can insert text, and then there's command mode where you insert commands and stuff like that. So you can't just start typing and go nuts, all right? So what I'm going to have to do for starters here is I'm going to have to go into insert mode. So I'm going to type the letter I, and now I can type something. So just make some more text here. Okay, so what I've done is I've now made a little bit of text. And again, with VI, you have all kinds of crazy commands. So if I want to start moving around, I've got to go out of text mode. All right, so I'm going to hit escape. And then now the keyboard doesn't do text anymore. So things like the letter J lets me go down, the letter K lets me go up, stuff like that. So we're now in the command mode. So we type whatever we want to type, and you learn all of these whole new keyboard commands in terms of how to navigate around and delete stuff and go to end of line and all this stuff. So what we want to do now is let's go into command mode and let's see how to save this. So go ahead and we just hit the colon. And there's a number of commands in here. For example, Q will be quit, but that won't save it. So I'm going to hit W, which means write it to the disk. So now it's saved. That's good. And if I want to quit, I just type Q and I hit enter. And there I am, right back where I started. So let's do an ls and let's see if we got a Bob in there. Great, there's Bob. I'm going to do a command that's not on the CompTIA called more, which is basically show me print out a file. So I'm going to do more Bob. And now I can actually see the contents of that. So I have now officially covered my requirement of showing you the V-editor. Now let me warn you. Make sure you know it for the test, because that's important. But I can't stress enough that Linux comes with, I don't know, hundreds of text editors, and there are so many better ones, I can't even begin to name them all. Old school would be like Joe or Vim, or if you're more into something more modern, like something I like, you can use Nano. There's hundreds of different text editors out there. Learn V for the exam, and get yourself a real text editor for the real work in Linux. The last couple of commands I want to talk about are shutdown and sudo. Now, in the Windows environment, you have to open up a command prompt as an administrator to be able to run a number of important commands. In the Linux environment, there is no administrator prompt, but there's basically, for certain commands, it's going to say, in order to do this, you have to be super user. So let me show you a couple of things here. First of all, shutdown. Shutdown shuts down the system. So to run shutdown, you just type in shutdown. Now watch what happens though when I do this. You'll see it gives me an error. It says, you must be root. So this is a perfect example of a particular program that says, no, 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 no. You have to be a super user, root, to do this. Now, in order to make this work, all we have to do is type in sudo, S-U-D-O, and then whatever command we want to run. So if I hit enter here, it's going to say, give me the password for this particular one. Now what's interesting is I'm actually logged in as student right now. Tough. In the Linux world, it's like, type that password again. And I'll type in the password, and I am not going to hit enter, because if I do that, it's actually going to shut down the system. So make sure you understand that the shutdown is how you can shut your system down from a command prompt. Sudo is used for hundreds of different commands that come into play, and it's as a safety measure to make sure that people with the right permissions are doing these types of scarier things. You don't want just anybody shutting your system down.